Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here. I'm very excited to be here with you today. And today I'm going to share with you how to choose better patterns. Okay. I'm guessing if you have been crafting for any amount of time, you can relate to this. You see a picture, you're like, oh, I want to make that. You hunt down the pattern, you potentially purchase the pattern. You start working on the pattern and you realize this is not what I thought it was. um, for what could be a whole plethora of reasons, it may disappoint you. Here's the thing. That's always a potential. I just want to be real upfront about that. Until you have a pattern in your hands and look through it, you're never really going to know necessarily exactly what's in the pattern unless you ask the designer a lot of questions, which if you have an important question, that's not beyond option. You can certainly email a designer if you have a question about construction or fit or something that you'd like to know before you purchase the pattern. I will caution you, please don't email a designer and say, what stitch is this? Because that puts up a little flag in a lot of designers' minds that they feel like you want to know the stitch or the stitch pattern so that you can then not purchase the pattern and just design it or make it up yourself. So I wouldn't ask about specific stitches. But you can certainly say, if it's a sweater, is this top down or bottom up? If it doesn't say so in the description and you have a strong preference for one or the other. But here's the deal. It used to be that you could only purchase patterns through publishers, like official publishers. There would be magazines in your craft store or that you could subscribe to. You could purchase books from a bookstore or a craft store, and that is how you got your patterns. We have since moved to a space where there is availability and easy availability and less expensive availability for people to self-publish. So that comes with good and bad. The great part is that there's no, we don't have to only make what publishers see value in or magazine editors see value in. You can go to Etsy or Ravelry or search the internet and find on blogs and people's independent websites hundreds and thousands of patterns that may have never ever been published by a magazine or a book editor. But because people can publish independently, it allows that side of the regulation to be taken away and people can publish whatever they want, which expands what is getting published immensely, which is of great value. It allows people endless creativity and creators, makers, lots of options, which is super cool. The downside to that loss of regulation is that there is potential for people who don't have a firm understanding of how to write a pattern, that they are also publishing patterns. And I have purchased patterns and found them missing what I would consider essential pieces, that if they had gone through an official publishing process with a magazine or a book publisher, the publisher would have made sure that all of those pieces were in there. So there's good and bad. Now, I'm not saying that because someone is not highly experienced, that obviously they're going to be missing some pieces. That is not true. There are certainly people who publish their first pattern after a great deal of research and attention to detail, and their very first pattern is wonderful. But because there's no standard for that in some of these independent publishing platforms, that's not always the case. So good and bad come from a wider and freer availability for publishing patterns. So I'm going to talk about how to pick better patterns in kind of two categories. All right. First, I want to talk about how to pick high quality patterns. Like I said, anybody out there can publish. And I think that I have found that there are some key pieces that you can look for in pattern listings. And I'm going to show you specifically on some websites how to look for these things. I think there are some key things that you can look for that can help increase your chance of purchasing a high quality pattern. So instructions are correct, all the pieces are there, those kinds of things. All right. The other thing I want to talk about is sometimes we're disappointed because we purchase a pattern and the instructions don't make sense. Sometimes we're disappointed because we purchase a pattern and we were hoping for something specific out of the pattern. And when we open the pattern and start to work, it is not what we thought it was going to be. So I'm going to talk about high quality, how to purchase high quality patterns, and how to find the pattern that you are looking for that's most going to fit exactly what you were hoping to make. So let's dive in. The first thing I want to talk about is how to find high quality patterns. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that these things do not necessarily have to be true for it to be a high quality pattern. I'm going to point you to a couple things, and there are, I believe that these things increase the chance of it being a high quality pattern, but there are lots of patterns that may not include these things that may be of very high quality. So I don't want you to completely exclude every pattern that doesn't fit each of these categories very specifically as a not high quality pattern. I just want you to think about these things as you're looking for patterns to purchase to better your chances that the pattern will be high quality. The other thing is, just because a pattern includes all of these things also doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be perfection and 100% mistake free. That is obviously our goal, or my goal at least, with publishing patterns. I want them to be as mistake free and easy to understand as possible. But we're all human. We are all human in every step of the process. And so I have absolutely found mistakes in my patterns that meet all of these criteria. Almost all of the time, they have not been like make or break to making the pattern, but it happens because we're human. I encourage you, I'm going to say just for myself, if you find a mistake in one of my patterns, whether it's like I said they instead of them, or something more, no matter how little or how big the mistake you find in my pattern, I would love to know. So send me an email. It's on all of my patterns. I like to fix those things. All right. So here are my suggestions for how to better improve your chances, I'm going to say, of finding a high quality pattern. the first thing I'm going to suggest is to look at the designer's portfolio or shop kind of overall. If a designer has very few patterns, it may be an indication, especially if this person is on Ravelry, where when you publish a pattern to Ravelry, you don't incur immediate cost. I think that lends itself a bit more to people being a bit more hobbyist about publishing patterns. They may say, oh, I just made up this cute little, I'm thinking I made it a doll dress for my niece. When I opened that pattern, I would say that person was probably a hobbyist. They were somebody who had crocheted a lot, who had made up this cute little doll pattern and had just put it out there into the world, not to make a bunch of money, not because they want to be a crochet designer, but because it was cute and they just wanted to share it. So it was missing some important pieces of a pattern, in my opinion. So I think a designer that has several designs, especially if you can tell that they have been publishing for several years. So let's say they publish, one pattern every 2 or 3 years. I'm going to say that's likely an indication that they are not, they're not making it their job, or even like a side hustle, and that their focus may be less on the quality of the pattern, and maybe more on having fun with it. So, but if you notice a person only has 5 patterns, but they've published those 5 patterns in the last 3 months, that may be more of an indication that they're just getting rolling on their design career, and that those may be extremely high quality patterns. So, something to think about. The next thing I would like to suggest to you as you're looking through patterns is to notice the quality of the photography. This is something that's challenging for people, and that a lot of people grow with as they design more and more. But if someone takes their designing seriously enough to either pay someone who knows what they're doing to take really good photographs, or to take the time themselves to learn how to take high quality pictures, to me, it is more indicative of someone who is taking this really seriously and wants their overall patterns to be as high quality as possible as well. So really nice high quality pictures, I think, are a good indication of it ups the potential for a very high quality pattern. The other thing is to give the listing a real look. A look over. I'm going to share my screen a couple of times here. And the first thing I want to share is let's see. I'm going to show you one of my patterns. This is my Fiona. This is my Fiona pattern. All right. So let's see. I want to go to the details here. So this is my Fiona pattern. And the next thing I want to encourage you to look at, I want to show you where it is here on Ravelry, and I can show you a complementary space to look kind of on Etsy too. So if you go to a pattern listing on Ravelry and you look up here, you've got the details. This shows you all of the details that I choose to put on here about my patterns. And if you go over here up at the top, these are all tabs related to that same pattern. So if you click over here on projects, you will see every project that any person has linked to the pattern. I'm not going to say that this is like every person who ever made a Fiona headband linked their pattern or their project here, but it does give you some indication that other people have made the pattern and that other people have successfully made the pattern. You can see when you look at these different projects that the end result of other people matches the end result of the designer. So you can see same texture in my pictures as in their pictures. I think that that's a great, projects are a great resource on Ravelry to help you look at those kinds of details and to see what other people have made. So if lots of other people have successfully made the pattern, it helps you know that like that's got at least enough of the pieces that other people have been able to make it. So now I'm going to share with you. Let's see, where do I have? Okay, so now I want to look on Etsy. And I'm going to show you this pattern. This is just one I pulled up because it has what I was looking for. Etsy does not have projects. People who make the pattern can't link to it in the same way. However, they can leave a review. And if you look down here, you can see that for this pattern, there are reviews specifically for this pattern. If this section is missing, it simply means that people have not chosen to leave a review. Now, obviously, this does not mean that if no one has chosen to leave a review specific to the pattern, that the pattern is terrible. It just means that people don't leave reviews a lot, and people don't necessarily make projects on Ravelry a lot either. But seeing other people's work can be a good indication. So this review not only says that she enjoyed making it, but it also has a picture of the sweater that she made. And so that can show you that, look, other people have made this and enjoyed the pattern. So looking at reviews on Ravelry, especially if there's a review specific to that pattern, can really help you know if, frankly, if other people have had success in making the pattern. So that can be a good way to help if you're looking on Etsy. As you read listings, some designers choose to share if their patterns have been tested and tech edited. I will say that I know absolutely that there are designers who test and tech edit their patterns who do not specify that on their descriptions of their patterns. But if you read a listing carefully and it mentions that it has been tested and tech edited, it helps give you an indication that that pattern has been written and made by the designer, made by people other than the designer, and looked over very carefully by a tech editor whose their sole job is to look for mistakes and help fix them. So if you see that on a listing, I think that's a great indication of a high quality pattern. Again, I'd like to say this does not mean no mistakes exist in that pattern. It just means there have been several eyes on it and improves the chances that it's really high quality. All right, so now let's talk about how to find the pattern that you are looking for. because I have absolutely had it happen where I have purchased a pattern and thought I was getting one thing and realized in opening the actual pattern that it was not quite what I was expecting, even if it was a very high quality pattern. It could be that I thought it was, I don't know, a raglan yoke, and it ended up being a round yoke. I thought that it was a fitted hat, and it ended up being slouchy. I like a hat that decreases at the top so that there's not a bunch of extra fabric, that it can be fitted to your head. And so when I get a pattern and open it up and it's just a tube of fabric that gets cinched at the top, that's not what I'm looking for. So here's some ways that you can better find exactly what you're looking for in a pattern. 1, know your personal style. All right. I'm not going to go into this too deeply because I have 2 videos about how to discover your personal style, and another one where I walk you through things from my wardrobe to discuss construction, shape, drape, and ease. So you can watch those 2 videos. I'll link them down in the description. You can watch those 2 videos if you need help in finding your personal style. But if you don't know what you're looking for in your pattern, you're going to have a much harder time finding a pattern you really love, unless you really just don't have strong preferences. But if you have strong preferences like I do for hat style, and you want a hat that decreases at the top, and would be disappointed if you purchased a pattern that didn't, if you don't know that that's a preference and you just open up a pattern and are like, I don't like this, but I don't really know why, you could know better for next time, if that makes sense. So things to think about: how do you like the fit of things? Do you like your hat slouchy? Do you like your hat fitted at the top? Are you looking for a heavyweight hat or a lightweight hat? Do you like brimmed or brimless? These are all things that could change potentially the specific pattern you would purchase. For sweaters, do you like a boxy fit or a fitted fit? Do you like a raglan yoke or a round yoke? The better you know your personal preference, the better you can search for those things, and the more likely you will be in love with your finished product. All right. The next thing I want you to think about when purchasing a pattern, now that you've decided what you want, is I want you to look at how it's modeled. All right. So I'm going to pull up an example of this. If you look at the modeled pictures on this cardigan, I want you to think about a couple things when you're looking. And if this is especially challenging, if you're just like scrolling through Instagram and you see a picture that you really love, it can be easy to just say, I love that, I'm going to go buy that pattern. But I find that a lot of times the people modeling the pattern, unless I really consider carefully, it can be deceptive. So I want you to think about 2 things about the modeled pictures. 1, I want you to think about how the model compares to yourself. Okay. So I am a shorter person, which can be a hard thing to compare. But I have a larger bust. And so, and I'm a curvy person. So if I can see that a model in the picture has a smaller bust and is very, very thin and narrow person, the way that the item fits that person it's not going to fit me the exact same way. The other thing to think about, and I have been, I don't think designers do this intentionally, but I have been tricked by this when I don't think about it, is you can see the hand on the hip here can make the shape of this cardigan look like it's fitted at the waist when it's not. So what I'm going to do to get a better idea of the shape of the pattern is look at the projects. This pattern has lots of projects for me to look through. And when I get into them, one of the first things I see is just the sweater all by itself, not even being modeled. And I can see the construction then is a more straight up and down construction. The other thing I can see is I can see a person right here who, in my mind, has a more similar size and body shape to mine. And you can look through. This pattern has lots of people of different sizes and body shapes, including children. And that can be a good way to notice if this is more like your body shape, how is that pattern going to look on you? So that can be a great way to both get an idea of how a pattern looks on different body shapes and what a pattern, the true shape of a pattern without it being changed by the body that's wearing it, if that makes sense. So look at the model and consider how closely does that person share your body shape, and then use the projects to notice the true shape of the garment, especially if you're looking at garments. But you can also see this with hats. If the designer has a hat only worn and a project has a flat lay, that can give you a better indication of the actual shape of the hat. If you don't prefer to purchase through Ravelry, I am going to suggest that a Ravelry subscription is free. And even if you don't ever purchase a pattern on Ravelry, you can use it as a tool to search projects of a pattern that you like if it's on Ravelry. The other thing is, if you are on Instagram, you can search for hashtags related to the pattern. That can be a good way to look at the pattern on different body shapes and maybe some flat lays. Again, you can go back and look at the reviews on Etsy. If there are reviews and customers have shared photographs, that can be another great way to get a better indication of the pattern and how it might look on your body. The last thing I want you to think about when purchasing a pattern to help you find most what you're looking for is knowing your limits as far as modifications go. All right. Some people are very comfortable modifying a pattern. They can see a sweater and say, I want that to be a cardigan, and I know how to change it into a cardigan. But some people, that's a very uncomfortable thing to do. Easy things to change are like the length of a sweater, especially if it's a top-down sweater. There is no reason why you couldn't turn a simple stitched crop top into a full-length sweater. It's easy to change sleeve length if you want it 3/4 length or short sleeve versus a full long sleeve. Those can be pretty simple modifications. If you want to adjust the yoke of a sweater, but it has color work or intricate lace or texture, that can be a bigger challenge. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying, know your limits. If you have never done color work before and you want to take that sweater and make major modifications to it, that's going to be a big challenge. Something else is you could absolutely take a hat that is just a straight up tube that's cinched at the top and add your own decreases on the last few rounds and make it into a fitted hat. That's definitely a more challenging thing to do, especially depending on the intricacy of the hat. This all comes down to, though, how willing are you to frog? If you don't have a timeline to finish in and you have purchased the pattern, you can make as many modifications as you'd like. And if you are willing to frog the top of that hat 30 times to get exactly what you're looking for, and you have no deadline, then go for it. Play with it. The great thing about yarn is it's reusable. If you get to a certain point and you don't like it, you can frog back and start again. So I encourage you to know your limitations. If you've got a birthday coming up and you want to make something and that hat pattern would take a lot of modification, that's maybe not the best time to dive in. But if you want to try something just for fun and it's going to take a lot of modifications and you're willing to give that a try, go for it. I will say though, if you are going to make major changes to a pattern, you cannot expect the designer to give you a ton of support. They don't have the time or the resources to essentially rewrite the pattern for you. So you need to think about what you're willing to take on there. All right, so those are my suggestions on how to pick a better pattern. I hope that you found this helpful. I'm going to put all sorts of links in the description below. Check those out. Watch more of the videos. I would love it if you would like this video. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Turn on notifications if you don't want to miss out on any upcoming videos. I've got lots more tips and tricks to share. Also, in the description below is a link to sign up for my newsletter where you will get all the news as well as premier access to all of my patterns with special discount codes. So I hope you will sign up. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this helpful. Happy crafting.